Another company which released its full year numbers today is Group 5. It reported diluted headline earnings per share, which was down by 49%. But joining me now for more is Eric Vemer, the Chief Executive of Group 5, who remains optimistic, which is what we want. We want Afro-optimists and people who are upbeat, despite the fact that maybe this last period wasn't really in your favor, right, Eric?
No, look, it was a very challenging year, and I must say that a lot of it was self-inflicted, having the significant loss-making contract in the Eastern Cape that we had to work our way through over this last financial year, so that weighed very negatively on the engineering and construction results. But the balance of the group performed well. I mean, the manufacturing team did a very solid performance in very challenging domestic markets from a volume point of view. And our concessions team, which includes our niche toll road development and operating company in Eastern Europe, did extremely well, generating around 2/3 of our group profits. But really, they're self-inflicted through a very significant loss-making contract. And the markets in South Africa do remain tight, particularly in the civil engineering space. And that's where we have seen, unfortunately, a number of employees lose their jobs over this last financial year.
You say self-inflicted. What have you learned from this then that you'll implement in contracts going forward?
Yeah, I think it was just the process. We were a subcontractor on this contract, operating for a big international company, so we were almost at, call it, the bottom end of the food chain. And there was a long time period between when we negotiated the job and secured it to when we actually got the notice to proceed. It was a project under a financed IPP program in South Africa. So it was in excess of 2 years in that time period, and people, the actual estimating teams and the commercial teams did not revisit how some of the pricing had moved in that time period fully. We then had some challenges at project commencement. We had a late start, and once you start late in construction, you're always on the back foot. And a very tight site, a very complicated site. So perfect storm as far as a construction contract goes, and one that we certainly do not intend to repeat.
Just a moment ago, I was speaking to the CFO of Black & Veatch just about them launching their own engineering business here in South Africa. When you see international companies like that coming into this local environment, which you're quite familiar with, and speaking so optimistically about the opportunities presented, do you perhaps view their optimism slightly differently?
No, I think certainly Black & Veatch is a company we know well. They're a significant engineering company in the power space, and power is a sector that we do see a lot of activity. So both in South Africa and across Africa, we were successful in this year with the award of the Pone Power Project in Ghana, which is a $400 million, circa $400 million construction project for a new gas-fired power station, privately financed. South African money that's financing that job, ECIC, the South African Export Credit Agency. So a real model of Africa to Africa solutions, and one that Group 5 is very much focused on. So we are an African-focused company completely. Apart from our niche concessions business in Eastern Europe, we see our destiny in Africa, and we share that enthusiasm. Markets come and go and cycles come and go. Mining sector, oil and gas, very challenging currently, so we're not seeing a lot in the mining, oil and gas industrial space. Opportunities in oil and gas, but oil price is low, so one doesn't know exactly what the rollout timeline will be for the oil and gas projects. But power, very active, and transport, very solid opportunities across Africa in transport.
Your share price is also up today. It's closed the market up by 3%, despite the fact that it has fallen quite significantly year to date. But clearly this means that there's some kind of optimism that shareholders seeing that you're sharing with them. What is this optimism?
I think probably the market might have been, happy seeing the order book momentum. So when we last reported the order book momentum, apart from the Pone Award, the balance of the order book had been going in the wrong direction, but we've seen that order book come back over the last, particularly the last 3 months of the last financial year. So the order book grew to 14.1 billion rand in construction from 12.5 billion rand at the same time last year, so over the year. And that would have been positive, and our cash performance has been excellent, where we've grown group cash balances to circa 3.4 billion rand over the last year.
Something else, as you mentioned, was the cycles, and clearly that may be mining, commodity prices, as well as even construction, not really on the positive end. But are you right-sizing yourself and realigning your strategy to pick up on that cycle once more positivity kicks in?
Yeah, we've certainly, the building and housing part of our business remains very active and very buoyant, and we have a significant order book in building and housing. We did make quite a few changes during the year in terms of our engineering and construction cluster, because as Group 5 moves forward, we focused much more as one Group 5 pursuing larger multidisciplinary EPC contracts such as PON. So we had to align the businesses that together must now deliver integrated projects. It wasn't civils just doing a civil scope, projects just doing a project scope, and the energy team doing their own scope. They're now working together as a team, and that bodes well for our capacity to execute those form of contracts in Africa going forward and in South Africa. The civil side, we had to downsize the business in terms of permanent staff in alignment with where we see the civil engineering market, particularly in the domestic market, going. Roads and earthworks is still relatively active, but the civil technical type work is very slow.
Eric, thank you so much for your time. We certainly look forward to when things do pick up, and hope you'll still be at the helm. Thank you so much for your time today. That was Eric Vemer, the Chief Executive of Group 5.